So now I'm going to bring up our panel for Video 2020. Sean Cunningham is the CEO and president of the Video Advertising Bureau. He will be your moderator today. Sean, come on up. Tara Walpert-Levy is the VP of Agency and Brand Solutions at Google.
I'm going to go under you.
Come on, come right through. Maybe I'll go over here, get out of the way. Come on up, Tara. Dave Morris, Executive Vice President, Advanced Advertising and Client Partnerships at CBS Corp. So I'm like in the way.
I gotta watch the
Lyle Schwartz, joining the crew, President of Investment. How you doing, Lyle? North America for GroupM. Jason Kanefsky, needs no introduction. Anyone knows Jason? Chief Investment Officer at Havas Media.
Not going to push
Morris.
you off.
I already mentioned Dave. And Rick Welday, President of Xandr. Here's your panel. Thank you for indulging me. Take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Toby. I came to the realization that I would love to interview any one of these 5 people for at least 35 minutes, and we only have 35 minutes. So this is about the most you're going to hear from me, and I want my panel to take it over. I'm going to just ask one simple question to start and let them take it from there. It's really simple in that as much as all the advertisers' customers love the biggest screen they can see and get content on, the contract is also here, arm's length, moment's notice, and every screen in between. And as we think about an upfront, and we think about a marketplace, and we think about getting clients' goals done, their products sold, they're on ever more screens. Every day they're on ever more screens, whether it's OTT, whether it's online, whether it's addressable, social, those all have screens. I'm going to start with Rick Welday. What's recent progress in the ability, and I want the buyers to jump in as well, the ability to take all those customers deployed on all those screens and put it together in a meaningful way so we can coherently get the right message deployed to the right customer at the right time and start filling those sales channels with productive leads. What's the recent progress there?
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. But this is the longest panel. I feel like you're 20 yards away.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Hey, Tara.
We're in the same time zone.
Rick. Let me, listen, start with the consumer. I think it's pretty evident to all of us that content is exploding for consumers. It's being aggregated in any number of ways. So I want to start with that consumer experience. I don't think there's ever been a better time for there to be more content, and it's being aggregated in more and increasingly simple ways. So that's the consumer side. For the advertising side, that creates a follow-on effect that we have to keep up with. There's more work to do. We at Xandr have been very public about our intention to build a premium marketplace for buyers and sellers to do just that. It's not our hope or intention to limit that to owned and operated inventory. I fully expect that we will have a lot of third-party partner inventory that is of every type that you just described. It'll certainly include linear, all kinds of digital. Obviously, we're a major mobile company, so mobile is very important to us. We've got many partners in that space. But I think you're exactly right. We have to make it easier for advertisers to come in and buy audiences with data as part of that across inventory types. And do that in a singular way all the way through post-campaign reporting. That's more difficult today than it needs to be. It goes to your point. I think that we're in line of sight to deliver a much better experience for that. While Xandr's committed to doing that, I know that there are others that are also aspiring to do something similar. So I think the industry in general is trying to come together. I think there's more value in coming together than there ever has been.
Okay.
From a buying standpoint, and my background before I was in buying, the consumer now is watching in more devices more often, all over the place. And while as an industry we're getting better at putting it together, I think we're still at the 5-yard line. We got 95 yards to go, because even though we make these steps and each agency has to go build their own, we have not come together to really tackle the problem. We talk about it. We have panels about it. I've been on panels for a couple of years like this. But I think it's time to stop talking and time to start doing.
I disagree that we're at the 5-yard line. I think we're, to stay in football, I think we're in the red zone, which is where points get made and where you can really set yourself apart. And I think as the media companies today, we're all doing a very good job of counting up all the impressions against all these devices. The problem is we have multiple sources, whether it be ComScore or Nielsen or other, and we're trying to figure out how to bring it all together and make it easy to buy. And Xandr may help in that in the long run. But as a industry, we need to come together. The media companies need to come together because we all count up all these impressions, but we all do it a little bit differently. And what we're trying to do is figure out what is the best way to count up all the impressions, make it make sense for the advertiser, get paid for what is out there. Like, for instance, in OTT, we don't get paid for co-viewing in OTT. We think initiatives up front with Hulu and Roku and numbers there, we'll get that. We don't get paid for co-viewing in VOD. So someone watches a show. You have Family of Five watching a CBS show. They say, oh, let's go from live TV and watch VOD. We get one impression for that person or for that household. So there's things that need to change. It's coming. But we need to get together as a group, as the media companies come together. And right now it's tough because media companies are competitive, which is a nice euphemism to say we hate each other. And we definitely need to stop hating each other and start liking each other a lot more.
Well, I'll confess, I have no football analogies to offer, or at least not ones that I'm confident are accurate. And I have a lot of love for all the media companies out here. I think YouTube is trying to be an anchor that sort of conglomerates for all of the traditional and endemic content on the platform. But I do think I'm sort of more a little bit in Lyle's camp, if I understood the analogy correctly, because one of the things I think agencies are awesome at is helping the market to sort of separate signal from noise. And even the discussion about screens or impressions is a little bit of noise, right? It's important because you can't buy without it, but it's sort of missing the fundamental change that's happening, right? And so most of us in this room grew up in a world where primetime, or you said premium, or whatever content was sort of must-see TV and TV schedule driven and had a certain look and feel to it. And all the data is coming back saying that the consumer experience has changed, right? Primetime has become personal and is driven by people's passion, which is showing up again and again as more important than a lot of things that we traditionally considered as fundamental. And that creates a really different consumer experience, viewing experience, media and marketing experience. And I think if we approach it incrementally, whether it's about measurement or planning or other, then we lag where the consumer has gone, which is a really fundamental change.
Yep.
So,
Jason, how do we play catch up? I think it's a good point. I mean,
so fundamentally, as we sit in the shadow of Washington, D.C., I think it's important to quote a very famous president, Ronald Reagan, is that we need to tear down the wall. Right? I did a deal with Facebook just recently, and I fundamentally don't understand one number that they gave me. And the source, I love sourcing, Facebook. So I don't know if anybody from Facebook is here, that does not work. So, ComScore, if you want to jump in on that and take care of it, that'd be great, but somebody has to take care of the Facebook problem. So that's issue number one. How much time do I have? Do I have 33 minutes?
Keep going.
Okay.
keep going. Keep going.
Right. Issue number two.
You're among friends. Keep going.
Issue number two is incrementality. They took my mic away.
There you go.
It's Facebook. How'd they do that? Right? It's privacy. It's all about the privacy. So incrementality, right? I love how the digital folks, and I'm a TV guy. I grew up in TV. I've been doing it for a long time. Incrementality for reach is always television starts the curve, and then incrementality comes from the other screens. It'd be fantastic just once to start incrementality with, let's see how much digital actually delivers, and then layer on TV. Because I think that it would be a fascinating view into the reality of how much value is coming from primetime television and how much value is coming from VOD, which I happen to believe in, by the way. I have co-viewing, so we can count it for two. So take that down.
Negotiating already.
Right? But I think the reality is that we could talk about metrics and we can talk about the 5-yard line or the 50-yard line. There's so much more to building out the model than just measuring the house. It's understanding how creative works, understanding how to reach people at the right time. We talk a lot about the consumer journey, and the consumer journey is very different in television than it is when you're on a mobile screen. So think about that. I have nothing else.
Jason, I agree with you 90%. One area I'll disagree is I don't want to start with digital first. I don't want to start with TV first. I don't want to start print first. I want to start with the consumer first and the objectives and strategies that each client wants.
Yep.
Because at only that point can we put together the right communications program to achieve the objectives. And every client is different, every brand is different, and even within brands they have different strategies. So I don't want to set a guideline. I want to say, here's the best data, the best overview of the consumer from all angles. Now, planner, buyer, negotiator, whatever, work to meet the objectives and the strategies. So that's the only modification I would make.
I think it's a really important point. I mean, when a customer comes into a queue, whether it's a brick and mortar queue or it's an online queue, they're not a customer who's wearing either an orange or black jersey. Hi, I'm a customer who's digital. Hi, I'm a customer who's from a TV ecosystem, and I need to be spoken to differently. Rick, how close are we to really, as an industry, starting to think in a tear down that wall kind of way from your experience? So I'm hoping we're getting further down the line.
I mean, it's happening regardless of what we think or want. It's TV is becoming digital. I mean, streaming TV is digital. The nomenclature's of less and less value. I agree completely with Lyle. I mean, I think we should think in terms of consumers and audiences. Where they're consuming their content is important for us to know in order to reach them. But naming it TV or is Hulu TV or digital? Is DirecTV Now TV or digital? Is the new Apple streaming service or the Warner Media streaming service coming? Is that TV or digital? And so, by the way, it's very exciting to me to think of it in terms of all of that is going to be broadband enabled over time, which by definition, I think, would we all agree that's probably digital at some point?
Anything that's served one-to-one is digital. Anything that is served one-to-many is TV. The television experience in the living room is what it is, whether it's OTT or coming through broadcast, that is the same thing. So we get bollocksed up in all these different phrases and terms.
I think
Pure IP, how many years do you think it'll be before everything is pure IP delivered? I'm telling you right now, it'll take at least a decade, 10 years, before we are IP driven in the TV space. 85% of Americans tonight, when they watch television, are watching linear TV. 15% are streaming. Of that 15%, half are watching Netflix. So for ad-supported VOD on OTT, we have a long way to go before it's ubiquitous. But it is converging. It should be one impression, whether it's served in television or an OTT. If it's served on the television screen, I think it should count the same. Lyle, do you agree?
so. I would say.
Jason,
hold
do
on.
you agree?
So I would say that one to
I didn't even
none.
move my mouth.
I think one to none is digital. So I would start
I think
there.
that is a pessimistic view.
Right, but I think one to some and one to many, and one to some I think is video, regardless of how it's delivered. If it's video or if it's over broadband or over whatever IP or over a traditional television screen, that's one to some, and one to many is what we call the NFL. So I think how we describe video or screens or the content, it's content. And most of content is video, and most of content is delivered across multi-screens, but it's still video. It's not digital, it's not television. We have an opportunity to enable a client to add a 15, a 5, a 3, a 2, a 9-second ad to a piece of content, and they can be successful regardless of how it's delivered.
Dave, to answer part of your question, here I'm a little more hopeful than you are, because I actually think IP-enabled will be in about 5 or 6 years. Right. I don't know that it's going to be used
What's that?
as often as people think, but I think as the smart TVs move into the marketplace, those TVs, the life of a TV, I'm told, is about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So over the next 5 or 6 years, and we've already had a significant growth in smart, there'll be TVs that will allow it. Whether the consumer activates it or not, that's a different story. And whether the media companies will give us the opportunity to activate it is a different story. Now, I think of it as just different pieces of a puzzle. Right now, some of the linear are larger pieces of puzzle, with the direct-to-consumer, addressable, VOD, digital being smaller pieces. But the still point is that we have to put that puzzle together to get a holistic view for the message to be to the right customer. Until we can do that, we're going to be having a tremendous amount of overlap. We're going to have hitting consumers more often than we need, wasting a lot of money. And in fact, I think we're holding back the evolution of true communications. So I'm a little bit more hopeful than you are.
And I guess to that point, Lyle, I mean, already we've seen Nielsen said, all right, half of the adults in the United States aren't watching traditional TV or are watching it very lightly, but they're clearly growing in these other areas, right? Mm-hmm. And 90% of them are on YouTube. I'm sure many of them are on VOD or OTT and these other platforms. And yet, recognizing we lack perfection, the marketing movement with agencies and clients has not come even close, right? We could all safely move more aggressively than we are and know we're still sort of on the right side of the line, and yet it hasn't happened. And so why do you think that is? And what would it take to move it before we get to perfection in measurement?
Pointing to me. Okay. No problem. I can talk for
You're
days
sitting next to me.
on this.
I could be pointing at anyone.
think-
Right now, because you go all the way down here, yes.
I think part of it, and I'm probably going to hear a few boos out here, I think that waiting for an industry to all come together to make a move forward, I haven't seen success in that approach for, let's see, I've been in the business 35 years, so maybe before I was here it worked better. But when we went to commercial ratings, it was a small group that actually said, here's how we're going to do it, here's what we want to do, and we'll put our money behind it. And it was our clients. When I talked about multi-platform, single source, multi-platform, I thought the clients would be, hey, that's great, I want it. The response I got from my clients was, what's taking you so long? They expect us to be there. So do I need perfection? Nah, I'm an ex-researcher. There's no perfection. But I do want positive movement. And we've had positive movement. We've had, whether you call it fluidity, convergence, sea flight, or whatever. We're getting better. But we haven't got over that hump where we can actually pull it into a single database and really understand how to communicate to the consumer in a way that gives them the opportunity to see the ad, does not bore them, confuse them, make them angry at us, and be able to utilize it in the best manner.
But it's still a business. And when Viacom talks about C35, if it takes them 35 days to get 35 people, that's not a business model that clients want to sign up for. And the fact of the matter is that we're going from C3 to C7. We can debate whether that was a good decision or not. But as we add multi-platforms and multi-touch points and everything into one bucket, there's absolutely no way we're going to measure this thing right. And I'd almost rather bifurcate it sometimes and say, you know what, we're going to bifurcate it. We know how to count this. We know how to count that. We know how to do ads. We can go this plus this equals that. And we'll come up with something that resembles our own curves. And then, by the way, you can measure based on sales.
True, but I think part of the...
Aren't we doing that today by adding up the digital bucket with DAR, Nielsen C3, C7? We're doing that today. Ingredient add up of the total impressions for a campaign. We just want to make that easier to do, and we'd like all the media companies to use the same methodology, and that's what I think we need to get to.
I don't think media companies need to use the same methodology, to be perfectly honest. I think that's because first of all, every holding company on the vendor side wants to have their own methodology, which they prefer based on their own business outcomes. Agencies have their own business outcomes they're trying to manage, and then you have client outcomes. So I think, again, if we wait for perfection, for all of us to agree on something,
No, I'm looking for good.
Yeah.
As David Cohen says, perfection is the enemy of good, and we're trying to get to good. And there's a lot of good work being done, whether with Jane Clark and Sim and others, to try to figure out how do we follow that 30-second ad across several different platforms and devices and count it accurately for a total impression during your flight.
Let me turn that into a specific question, because I absolutely daily sort of feel the tension between the need for industry collaboration. There's been an alphabet soup of well-meaning smart people on consortiums. And yet everyone, as an individual member, if you will, of that media community, has got some serious onus, and burden. And I would ask the three people up here who have got significant, investment in data platforms and, the ways to better connect and more seamlessly connect. The onus in terms of taking friction out of the process and the onus in terms of bringing sharper customer insights from, we could call it last year's upfront versus this, or we can call it, recently versus, now. And Tara, I'll start with you. When we're talking about the entirety of the process of essentially enabling clients, advertisers to sell more stuff, to build a brand, to launch a product, in terms of friction out of the process and insights about the consumer, and again, I think the onus is on the individual companies as much as the industry. What are the improvements recently?
I am actually optimistic on this. I think we and others have been making improvements, starting first with making data available that helps figure out simply what's happening, right? So Dave mentioned TAR. We made mobile data available for TAR because so much of the YouTube viewing is mobile. We have gotten feedback from folks up and down this panel that has made it easier to understand simply what is happening, right? We've also put YouTube reach curves into the planning tools at the different agencies, again, in order to be able to see side by side simply what is happening. And I think other folks are doing more of that also. So I do think there's an element of trying to at least surface what we all have, right? I think where you sometimes get into conflict is when there are misaligned incentives, right? So the MRC just came out with a recommendation for a standard that we could all use to look comparably across video platforms. Immediately, Nielsen said it was too expensive. The TV folks said they didn't like it. The digital folks said they do like it because it makes it more equal. That, how we hammer through that without an arbiter, and I guess in some ways you guys are ultimately the arbiter, that's part of what takes time, the way Lyle mentioned. I think the other thing, and you mentioned something, insights I think of as quite different necessarily than friction removal. And I do think that's, again, where there's a lot of encouragement about the insights that we're getting about consumers across all platforms. Because I think there's recognition now, you can see it in the data, that campaigns perform better when you are using audience segments that are much more than demo, right? And you get a lot of additional insights naturally out of digital and platforms like YouTube, because you can see much more precisely like what kinds of content people are interested in, what that says about the segment that's different than what you thought, and it might sort of change your outcome. Just to give you the most simple example, there's something we did recently with the Navy. A lot of their ads were very, let's call it like Top Gun at sea, because their hypothesis was people were like, super into team, gung-ho, active kind of stuff. Yeah. The data actually showed that actually what all these folks were looking at was very individual self-development types of content. And so it completely changed their creative strategy, to Jason's point, which led to much more effective campaigns, again, across YouTube, but also across their entire media buy. And again, I think we're seeing the TV networks and others be able to surface more of that in ways that are also super helpful.
Yep. And Rick, I was going to say, when we shift to that insights part, the consumer insights part, and the aha moments and the light bulb, now what you can do now, when you come to see Lyle and you come to see Jason, what do you get to talk to them about that you had promised 2 years ago, but now it's here?
Yeah, so it's interesting for me to hear the conversation. It's educational. It's interesting to put a point in. We're known, our claim to fame is for addressable TV. I can tell you in the 4 years I've been in this job, we have very few discussions, problems, concerns expressed to us with our clients around measurement, and I think it's for this reason. With addressable TV, obviously the data has never been better before. I mean, our clients come with very robust target audiences based on lots of attributes that they've collected themselves. So we can custom match that to addressable households. We can deliver that campaign. By the way, if they don't have that, we can work with them to develop that. But at the end, there's so much attribution, reporting, and data available at the end of that for them, it's, Tara commented earlier, it's about outcomes. And so here, it's just this simple. When it works, they know it works. And there's enough data today to say if it worked or not. And so for us in the addressable space with Xandr Media, ComScore will validate that we did what we said we're going to do. So when we go out and say that this is the campaign you paid for, ComScore will validate and say they did what they said they were going to do, but frankly, more importantly, they have the outcome data of that activity. And so I'm not getting as much of a friction in terms of measurement dialogue on a daily basis, because I think the data is so rich now for both targeting and attribution that our clients are getting confident that what they've paid for is producing a return.
And let me just add to the addressability front. 48 million people a day watch CBS programming 365 days a year. We don't know who they are, nor can we serve an ad directly to their house. And that is a huge opportunity for CBS going forward to do addressability. Addressability has been small. It's been clunky. It's been hard to buy. It's been 2 minutes an hour. It's on your footprint, on Comcast footprint, on Altice. Addressability is not going to take off unless you can do it in broadcast television or live TV on cable. That's what we're working towards with Nielsen, with Project OR, with Vizio, and Nielsen through Samsung as well. You guys, and trying to work doing it on both Dish and on DirecTV. So we don't have the data. You have the data. You have the data. CBS does not own the data. It's the MVPD or the smart TV. So Rick, are you going to give me your data for free?
Yeah.
He's talking price already.
Yeah.
He cannot answer this question.
Yeah.
He's going to stammer for 5 minutes and get it back to Sean. Let's just go back to Sean.
No, here, I'll
I think
answer.
let's give
I'm
Rick.
going to rescue you, Rick.
I've never known Rick to be a
say yes, let's move
stammerer,
on.
so Rick.
I will answer it. No, listen, it may bridge into a data privacy discussion. Listen, we're unique in this regard. Our data comes from 170 million deterministic billing relationships for video, wireless, and broadband. Everybody knows the DNA of AT&T. That's a subscription business. So we take very seriously the protection of that data in terms of that relationship on a monthly subscription fee. It's not a transaction source for data. They're paying us every month to do business with us. So I think it's important to set the context of how we think about it. We're very, very protective of it. Now, we use it in our addressable advertising, and we've had conversations about this. I think you'll continue, in fact, I know you will continue to see us make it available with the right transparency and the right consent from our customer base, and we're working through that now.
So I just have two quick things. One, something that Tara said about audience segmentation and campaign performance. That is definitely true, that the more audience segmentation you have around campaign performance, the more successful you'll be, qualified for a period of time. Because eventually you will fish at that lower funnel, and that will be the end of your business. So not filling the upper funnel with larger reach broadcast television without audience segmentation per se doesn't necessarily fill the business for the long term. And then to the point you made about CBS doesn't know its audience, I think Lyle and I would pretty much agree that if you put 10 people in a room, we can pretty much very accurately predict who's a CBS viewer and who is not. So
Maybe.
Yeah, not maybe. I think we have enough data to support who's watching CBS and who's not. So I don't need addressable TV or high-end analytics to go find a CBS viewer. So from that perspective,
But
go
to
ahead.
find a CBS viewer in market for Alexis.
I don't think there are any. But
This is the best panel yet.
Come on, with viewers that old, they got money. I'm teasing. But I do think to this point, just one thing. I think it's a myth about customer segmentation that you're sort of lowering the funnel like that, because you can do it that way. And to your point, we were having this conversation backstage. You then run out of sort of the breadth of what you need. I think what we've seen many marketers lean much more successfully into is audience segmentation across that breadth, right? Because digital platforms, the big ones, and folks like Xandr and others do offer TV-like audiences. But I think this hones in on exactly what I think, Rick, we'll see as everybody continues to mature. The reality is no marketer is going to, nor should they, buy from just one of us, right? Or even like 90% one of us, right? So their question is, how do we allocate appropriately? Which is why the good news is marketing works, and all of our platforms show that it does. The question is, like, how well, how much, and versus what?
Exactly.
And that's where I think our continuing collectively to sort of lean in with all of the industry bodies and the measurement partners like Nielsen and Comscore and others to kind of come to, I know Lyle says this never worked, but I remain optimistic. We can be the first, right? But I do think ultimately to make everyone here's lives easier and make sure that we are truly delivering what matters most for our marketers, we have to continue to get that comparability.
There's a big gap, because we're here talking about data in silos, with all due respect. We're even talking amongst ourselves as an investment. The data needs to be out there in the general agency, because you need to have the planners who have to understand how to allocate the resources to the objectives. You need to have the data shared with the creative agencies so we can make sure that the message built goes to the right audience. I've been in the business a couple of years, and I know that the planners do tremendous segmentations and allocations and all that, and then the buyers go in and do all the big buying, and then some of my clients come back with one commercial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yet I've got 18 different segments.
Right.
We need to have this data out there because we need to be working with clients to understanding all the communications channels.
Yeah.
In order to make it effective. Otherwise, we're spending a lot of time, a lot of effort just for show, guys.
Yep. There's a lot of onus in terms of a lot of things we're talking about, and whether it's, the onboarding, the wiring, the providing, the giving, and there's concrete cost inside of there. And you guys are talking about things that you're delivering premium insights, you're delivering a premium experience, and I think a harder line to outcomes. So in that environment where the ask is, you must provide, you must give, you must onboard, you must standardize, what's that worth? What in our economy, when we talk about premium, what's worth a premium? You guys as chief investment officers are going to interface with those clients. You're going to talk to them about what's worth a premium. Tara, I'll start with you. In this media economy, what do you think is worth paying more for? What's worth a premium?
Well, I think that's probably where we can all agree. I mean, you heard it several times on the panel. I think what's premium is what's going to actually generate business outcome for clients, right? That's the way ROI works. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry is sort of reshaping our perspective of what is likely to do that to reflect what is actually likely to do that for consumers. So just a couple examples that I think challenge stereotype about what is premium content. We did a study earlier this year with Omnicom that showed that people say that what is most important to them is content they are personally passionate about, which may not be that surprising. But what was surprising to me was how much more important that is than things like whether there are traditional celebrities in the spot, right? It was twice as, or 3 times more important. Or it was twice as important as whether it had professional production value. Things that we commonly associate when we talk about premium content. We also did some work with GroupM that said, if you are running against edgier content than you might otherwise have normally done, what impact does that have on your brand? And it turns out it actually doesn't have an impact one way or the other. It's all about, have you tapped into people's passions in a way that they're going to be engaged, leaned in, and basically open to having their mindset and behavior shifted. And I think that's what you pay for.
Right. Rick, you've gone from a few clients in addressability in the hundreds and are well down the road. And you interface with them constantly and you know their first-party data. When you talk to them, what's worth a premium? What's it worth?
I'm where Tara is on it. It's kind of funny. I appreciate the context of the question and premium being an appropriate word for it. It's really not a premium if you're getting a higher return on what you're doing. You could argue that whatever you're paying, you get what you pay for, right? So is it a discount if you're paying for something and it produces nothing? So at the end of the day, we price our products based on what we think the ROI is for that product, and the client decides if it's worth it. We don't think of it in terms of premium or not. We just think of it in terms of what's it worth. And frankly, that's an ongoing collaboration and dialogue with our clients.
Yeah.
And so with regard to content, just to pivot real fast on that with Tara's point, I agree with her. I don't think a panel decides what premium content is or not. I think that the consumers are going to decide that. I bookend it. I look at it and say, on one end, Warner Brothers, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Crazy Rich Asians. I think everybody agrees that's probably premium content, right? I agree completely. There's a lot of user-generated content that would also be premium content. It's very engaging, passion-oriented. There's probably some content out there that's created a lot of problems for people. Where does that become non-premium? When it's not brand safe. Yeah. And so I think for us, it'll be less of a debate about what's premium content. I think that consumers will decide that. To the extent that our clients have audiences engaging in that content, our responsibility will be to keep their brand safe.
Okay. One last question.
I'll just add one thing to premium content. Every single media company in the world goes into all your agencies, and the first thing they say is, we have premium content. Right. It is like, the opener for every meeting. So the question to me is, what truly is premium or super premium? The companies like ours, like yours, NBC, and then add in Netflix and Amazon Prime, we spend north of $5 billion per year on content. Yep. To me, that creates an environment, and some of it's buying rights, some of it's creating the content, but buying NFL rights, March Madness rights, and it's very expensive to be in, I think, what is called the super premium space. And I think advertisers appreciate that. They want the brands in it. Look at March Madness. The tournament's going great. Ratings are up. Lots of stars emerging, and your ads are in there with this emerging, exciting, young, youthful environment. What could be better for an advertiser? That's super premium content.
I got one last question. I'll start with our investment officers. One of my bright people handed me an Excel sheet, which of course I needed glasses to read. And yesterday, and it showed, and we like to keep track of DTC because it's such a huge, better than the major advertising categories. You put it together. 191 brands in doing DTC television advertising spent $4.8 billion in 2018, which is up, 300% from a couple of years ago. Every other one of them probably doesn't use agencies because they believe they own the data. What are they missing? What can your practice bring to the DTC folks that they might be missing because of what your shops can provide, Jason?
So just to clarify, when you say DTC, you're talking about direct to consumer, My Pillows, not DTC drugs, right?
No, not pharma per
Right,
se,
just not pharma per se,
but
okay.
basically drive to action.
So, we have 2 agencies that are part of the Havas umbrella that do direct response advertising, and actually a third as well that does, similar, they actually invest in the media for clients. So there are lots of different things that the DR agencies bring to the table, but one is the ability to optimize quickly. And they're looking at incredible amounts of data coming in terms of what's selling, where is it selling, how is it selling, why is it selling, and without the technology and the data to optimize, you're just going to leave a lot of money on the table. And the other part of it is it's understanding clearing costs, right? DR is somewhat of a biddable media per se, but if you don't understand what the clearing price will be, you just won't have enough rating points in the marketplace to actually effectively sell a product.
Okay. We're in theory out of time, but I would like 30 seconds from each person quickly. And you are on an elevator ride with the president of a Fortune 500 company and their chief financial officer. And they ask you, what do you do? And you start a conversation. Give me the less than 30 seconds about what's so terrific right now about the media ecosystem, knowing that all they care about is selling more stuff. Rick, I'll start with you. We'll come down the panel.
Wow. Listen, I would let them know that there's never been more data, more connectivity, more engagement with their consumers and their target audiences than there is today, and that we can help them deliver their message in a brand-safe environment with premium defined by their consumers and prove it with attribution on the back end for the CFO to make sure that they're confident that their money was well spent.
That's good. Dave.
I think that was beautiful.
Thank you, David. We'll talk more about it
There was
on the
no
way to the airport.
stammering whatsoever, Dave.
I
Put
would
it in
just
haiku.
Yes, you could. I would say never before has there been a time where catching a consumer's attention, holding that attention for hours on end during a day or week, incredibly important. That engagement. We'll share that engagement with you, advertiser, and put it in a super premium environment.
Jason.
Well, the first thing I do is push all the buttons on the elevator so I have more time.
More than 30 seconds, yeah.
That's number one. Then I hope that Shane is with me so he can explain it.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I think what I would say is that we know advertising works, but it's important to know which levers to pull.
Got it. Lyle.
Say I represent a team of qualified individuals who will help them achieve their objectives, grow their business, and be around for a long, long time.
Great. Tara.
I'd say you have an opportunity to be a part of culture and to not just capture attention, but influence people in ways you've never had before, and that the insights you get real time to optimize your campaigns as you do it deliver better results than you've seen in the past.
Thank you. I have another hour in me, but we don't for this panel, and I want to thank you guys so much for taking part in this.
Thank you.